So we're good. Thank you, and thank you for having me, Andrew. And as I said, I'm Håkan Edelsson from Sweden, and I'm in Sweden right now. So we have an 8-hour time difference to Andrew, where he is. And my presentation is going to center on my latest book, Data Diplomacy. And I already had that slide that you talked about. And I can also recommend attending the data modeling zone. I've been there many times in the data modeling zone in Europe and in the US. And it's a great opportunity for learning and understanding and actually challenge yourself with and provoke your ideas about data modeling, data design, and a wide range of topics, also architecture, CDMP, and data governance. So, I've been around. I'm a senior consultant, trainer, and speaker, and author. And senior means that I'm getting old. Okay, that's me up there with in my suit with my latest book, Data Diplomacy. That this presentation is going to center around. Previous books include Enterprise Architecture Made Simple, which is information-driven, data-driven architecture. That is actually based on a Swedish book that I wrote with a colleague a number of years ago, and also participate in the DM book here. Oh, it's that life. Yeah. Beyond this, like to play music, very often the bass, and speed around on my FJR. I'm in Sweden. Here we are. So also want to take the opportunity to put where we are in the green area here. The very green is Sweden, and the lighter green is European Union. And we've been in peace since 1814. And someone from the US said, well, you couldn't be in peace in 200 years unless you have diplomacy in your genes. Well, we stayed out of trouble in many different ways, but diplomacy is probably one ingredient in it. And diplomacy does not take a conflict to be useful. Although diplomacy very often comes in where there is a conflict between countries in wars and everything. But this is sort of a proof that we stayed out in trouble in 200 years, that diplomacy is very often about avoiding conflicts to arise in the first place. So more about Sweden, you probably know about some brands here. That Skype and Spotify actually originates from Sweden, and we have some Swedish gaming industry, quite fruitful. If you don't play this, maybe you play the Angry Bird one. Well, here we have an Angry Bird. Sorry for that joke. We have celebrities like Greta Thunberg, Alicia Vikander, the actor, and the best golfer right now, Henrik Stenson, best golfer from Sweden, that is. And we hand out the Nobel Prize, except for Peace Prize that is handed out by Norway, probably because we are exporting lots of weapons to countries that we then after can go be diplomats in. Sort of an idea. So, data diplomacy. I'm gonna walk you through this in the next 25 minutes about what it is and how we include diplomacy in data governance and data architecture, and how we work practically with diplomacy when we're doing business data design. So first, a lot of definitions and to sort of demarcate the area where I'm going to talk about. So first of all, if you have a data governance program, you're probably working with data quality, the correctness, the completeness, and the availability and the security around it, and addressing the performance in the process in the daily business. And ask yourself if that data governance program also influences the data design. It might very well do, because within data governance, you are probably finding impediments in your systems and addressing requirements watch IT to change that bit because it doesn't match this bit. And we are worried about the discrepancies between systems. Okay, but does your data governance program have a responsibility to design? And that is probably no. because usually data governance is centered around the contents of the data, not the design of the system, other than raising requirements. Well, if it's not responsible for the data design, who is? And probably have some architects in your IT department that try to understand requirements, ask the business, include them in some work about requirements for a system, probably in the arena of a project. And then very typically that data architect is turning their back to the business and tells the systems designer or those who are going to implement it, this is what I have understood that's going to need to be in the system structured this way. And that is second-hand knowledge, because the architect has asked the business what the data should look like and adjust that as an intermediate function. Of course, there could be that could be a target for having some kind of misunderstanding. So one of the statements that I put in my book around this is that business data design is actually a part of business design. So if you're, or rather when you design your business, you're going to design your processes, all the roles and the activities. You're going to organize it in your organizational structure. You're going to produce offerings and determine how to attract and to communicate and work with your customers. And that will always include data. So it's actually quite strange if you design everything and omit the design of data when you're designing your business. That's quite strange, isn't it? Why leave that over to someone, to a system or a data architect on the IT department that will do this on a second-hand opinion? So a way of having right from start, the business representatives need to dare to have the skills, the abilities, the prerequisites to take responsibility for designing their own data. I cannot use this statement a lot, because if you have the design on the other side of the fence from an IT perspective and have a coordinated effort for different parts of the organization that works with data design, you're gonna have, this is the diplomacy angle of it all, is that you're going to avoid lots of wars between the organizational functions and the war between the business and the IT, because you're already formed your forces from start. So, what it is? Another statement I work with is that everybody is a data worker in your organization. Just bring this line with you. This is a one-liner. So altogether, everybody is a data worker. Okay. For instance, in healthcare, you're probably a specialist. If you're a surgeon, or you're oncology or anesthesia, you're gonna need to know a lot of data about the patient in front of you. What's the diagnosis? What kind of medication is this guy on? What should we do? What's expected of us? Where should this patient go next? All data. And if those data are not present, you're going to have some, it can actually be dangerous for the patient from patient security perspective. So data is there. That's a big part of the job. And nowadays, machines are talking to us. For instance, these doors from Cargo, from Crawford Doors, that tells your maintenance organization when it's time for services and changing parts. And this goes for almost any item today, that collecting data as a part of the logistics or whatever business you do, data is a big thing. And we could use it, for instance, of the purposes you have in agriculture, because that tractor over there is a data collector for what kind of crops are we sowing in this place right now. Because authorities want to have traceability from that situation all the way to the fork to understand what has been done, what are the ingredients in case anything happens. So data is everywhere. So if you're not working operationally with your hands or in a tractor or something, you're probably 100% data worker, and everybody else is partly a data worker. Okay. Morning coffee. And another thing is that data governance is not a separate thing, which it tends to be very often. It's very popular now to just invest in data governance and put a heavy suit on top of the organization with appointing lots of roles and have that as a separate activity. And meanwhile, the IT department could be working with, oh, data science, AI, I'm going to do the new heavy stuff now. Look what kind of fancy tools we have. So data governance is part of management as such. So if you, for instance, have if you have a claim process and a customer is not happy with the product, that claim process, if it does not work, if it's too slow and the customer isn't happy or anything, you're probably going to fix that process with, okay, what are people doing this? Do they have the right skills? And do we have the right data up front when the claim is opened? Because if we have all the data, accurate data, and we check that data before starting the process, we're probably going to have a very good performance in that process and a happy customer. So that means that data governance could typically do such thing, but the leader, the local leader that would do this would probably not distinguish, am I fixing the process or am I fixing data? You'd probably say that I'm just fixing claims. So data governance should not be a separate thing over there. It's part integrated in your management system because data is a part of your business because everybody is a data worker. So the trick is to integrate that. I talk about that in the book as well, but I'm gonna narrow it down to the integration between data architecture and data governance. So data architecture. Many before me has used the analogy of the plumbing, having the IT and especially the data architects regarded as plumbers. Because at a plumbers conference, you will be talking pipes, fittings, storages, valves, everything but clean water. Nobody talks clean water at a plumbers conference because that's the business side. So consequently, if you want to talk clean water, let's skip that as architects because that's a business issue. Okay, let's try that a little longer. Still within plumbing. If a pipe will break, sorry for my voice, if a pipe will break, if we are plumbers, we will fix the pipe and the wastewater, the problem will disappear. Now, if we were IT, in the IT analogy, we wouldn't care about it. But the data governance would take care of it by organizing a permanent wiping team. So we clean the data as it goes. And if, God forbid, the tap water would be mixed with the sewer, that has happened in a sport facility in Sweden 20 years ago. And they redesigned the whole piping system. Every sewer and clean water pipe system was replaced in order to avoid this happening again. But since we have data architects here and we have business here, we probably just invest in another cleaning facility. So how do we get rid of that without, the angle is, let's make it right from start. Let's have the business representative take responsibility for the data design instead of second-hand opinion on IT. It's maybe convenient, but it's probably because why you may be in the zone in the middle there when you are crossed by maybe 2 or 3 value streams every day, coping the work just by integrating data between system Excels and probably not aware of your situation, but you feel that you don't have the power to change this, and maybe it's a little bit too much of a workload. So we need bridging, and bridging different parts of the organization and bringing business with IT in the moment where you're designing data. Because the lasting piece means right from start, or at least we know what is right, we know how it should be, let's take one step ahead right now when we're probably in a project or fixing something. And how is that done? Well, we need to include data design into the data governance. There are many data governance frameworks out there, and typically one of them is the Triangle. Bob Siner's, for instance, an excellent book, his non-invasive data governance. And that's nice, but I don't like the pyramid because it's sort of reminds of an organizational structure with something on the top and something in the bottom. That does maybe work for the roles, that there are different numbers of roles in different layers, but I prefer the circle because it's more of an operating model regardless how you organize. That is, when opening for data design in a data governance, we need separate arenas for different kinds of work. And this is 2 chapters of my book, one about how to work in this operating model, and one about what kind of roles and responsibilities do we need as a minimum for a lean data governance that includes business data design. So we have 4 arenas. One arena is the managerial, because whatever you do, you need management. You need to plan it, organize it, you need the resources, you need the funds and everything. But most importantly, when it's about data design integrated with data governance, is you need paving. You need to pave the way for having responsibility on the business side to make business design decisions regarding data. And this is a pie that you probably won't find in an arena, I would say, in not very many data governance frameworks. This is actually an organization, a silent organization, a network in your organization representing different parts in your different functions and different kinds of knowledge that together has an arena to make business design decisions. How that is carried out, I'm going to come back to that in the 3rd section. But this is, regard that one as new in data governance, because the operational part that your data governance framework, standard framework, would fit here. You need an organization to make sure there are accountabilities and responsibilities for the data to be right whenever it's used and delivered or captured. And typically you have many IT requirements quite on a detail level, very often, very specific, addressed to IT. And within IT, you will have your data architects, your solution architects, your integrators, and everybody that's typically within developing and processing various systems that you have in your landscape. And they have their plans and they have their governance, and they are not only affected by the data governance and the data designers, but those are critical input for the IT arena. Now, how do we do that change arena? How do we carry out that? Well, the thing is, you need an arena, and this is a physical arena. And it's a few years back, it's a colleague of mine, this guy over here, Jonas, and we are together working with a very wide data model, business data model, and it covers the entire organization and the entire representation. a representation from the entire world, because this is a global company. So they don't really often socialize, these guys. But they represent knowledge altogether, enough knowledge to cover an entire global process. And this case is about claims. So it covers lots of different data in the organization. For instance, when you have a claim, you have probably sold something prior to that, and you probably developed something prior to that, and you have the whole aftermarket, various kinds of data that you need to attend to, look into in a claim process. And you're probably going to look at the installed base. This is an industrial company within marine solutions. So you need to get into the customer installation as well to see how your items are interacting with others. So this claim process covers lots of data, tons of data, and it's a huge model. But within 3 days in a row, that is, we managed to cover that because everybody was in the same place, and we have a diplomat leading and communicating and keeping the conflicts down between various parts that are, prior to this workshop, not very happy with each other. There's a problem that has to be solved, and everybody's blaming everybody else. And the black guy in the black shirt in the middle holding a bottle, that's the IT guy. He's silent throughout the entire work because he's there to learn. He's not that kind of architect that asks questions and go to another room and draw a picture. No, the picture is drawn here. So they are collectively taking responsibility for the data model. And it's collective intelligence. I mean, nobody could solely take the full responsibility for one kind of data and make that valid for the entire company. You need input from the other parts. And you need models that are already done, because we didn't have R&D, for instance, represented in this workshop. So we just used what models that already were existing. They have a sort of data governance program that also include the data models. You're not only governing the data as such, the contents, you also have governance on the metadata that describes the data that they have the problem with. And that ownership of the data model is very vital for having the trust that someone that is appointed for having that responsibility for the product data model, in this case, that the trust that it's reliable, that someone has produced that model in a context, in a way, including lots of knowledge, that we can, in this new case, without R&D representing, we could rely on that model that has been handed out to us actually is valid. So the data architect in this picture, which is my friend Jonas and I, we are architects. That means that we can understand the requirements and draw the picture. But we are not architects in the sense of we are designing, because it's the business that designs this huge model. And we are facilitators. We take one step back and we are interpreting the truth from their side and having the collective knowledge explained on the giant white sheets. So not intruding too much as an architect of how it should be from our point of view, because we have the second-hand knowledge, they have the first knowledge. And entering that diplomatic mode, being the facilitator, I can't be the architect that says, I know this. On the contrary, my position, my posture from start must be, I don't know. Although I'm very well prepared. Okay, it's up there. Prior to this meeting, I'm very well prepared of what are the challenges, and maybe did some shadow modeling prior to this workshop, so I know what to expect. But I don't take any decisions because my posture, even though I'm well prepared, is I don't know. And I also need to listen, be neutral, frank, and curious to put the right questions to have the answers that will contribute to the result we're doing. So I can't have business taking responsibility, the business representative taking responsibility without that they feel that they really have contributed to the outcome. Otherwise, if I was turn my back and draw the model for them, it would be my model as a facilitator, and they would say, yeah, you're probably right, go ahead and do that. Okay, and as soon as we leave the workshop room, everybody will think that that's his model, and he had to fight for it. Now, as a facilitator, I don't have to do that if they feel that they own the model. And we tried that not just a couple of times. For the last 10 years, I've been working with companies like Ericsson and Volvo, the larger companies in Sweden, doing so, and gradually have them feeling more convenient with, well, yes, I own the model. I have my friends that influence this, and I know exactly what this, for instance, product data model looks like. And I have an interaction and interface to the sales and to the finance and to the aftermarket and product documentation and install base. I know that this model is consistent with all the others because we made this together. We made it with well-knowingly that this is my part and this is this guy's part. And we know that is he gonna change? I need to respond to what change you're doing. So it's very possible to accomplish, it's indeed possible to accomplish that situation. It takes endurance, and it takes looking at the facts and get rid of the feelings. It's okay to be angry, but let's get over it and rely on the trust. And also with the empathy, which is constantly reoccurring as an important thing in the data design area. I've heard it many times in the data modeling zone that empathy is a prerequisite for a successful facilitator. So this is sort of a diplomacy, what should call it? Just call it the diplomacy wall for ingredients to be fruitful, to have as a fruitful facilitator. Also, have the simplest syntax ever. Many-to-many, no geeky symbols, very easy to read from a distance, and straight lines without too many crossing and too many complex lines. Order and neat. That's also prerequisite. And understanding that there are different figures, different profiles there. In your mix, when you have a group that you work with and they're going to collectively own the model, or they're going to own different parts of the model, which is even better, you will have a front runner. That's the guy who is beyond everybody else, and he has a follower that follows the front runner, because otherwise it's just a lone wolf. And someone who's looking upwards to understand that, okay, we need funding, what's expected from us, and we need a detailed guide to say, okay, I take one step at a time, and I'm careful where I put my feet. And the backward-looking guy that knows that the rear mirror is bigger than the rear window is bigger than the rear mirror. And he probably doesn't know even that he's moving forward slowly, but the truth is in the past. And this mix is excellent for produce something that will last, because all the perspectives are needed. Very quick in the end now, but time's running and it's time for questions. So there we are.
Okay, so you got any questions? Other than the Q&A?
Yeah.
Done there at the moment. On the chat.
Oh, hi, Anna. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Lovely to hear from you again.
Any questions?
My question is, sorry?
So in your work, this engagement with the executives, does it happen with every engagement? Or, so how often would you say that you're dealing with an executive and walking through a data model?
Yeah. In occasions with change and when you need funding and you need sponsors, of course, that's an executive part. And I think that informing them and including them once you go, not only having one business case and then we meet in the end and see what all happened, but somewhat include them in the work. And when you hand over business design to the business representatives, the good thing with that is you're starting to think business questions, and you will raise some issues, some matters that are existential for the business. What kind of company are we? Are we going to keep that data and do things in this way? And that usually are not the mandate of the people I gather in the business design workshop. Many of them are either operational or middle managers in such group. And very often we need to raise questions and address that to senior management. And then they are informed that we're dealing with data in this way. We are thinking that this data could be used in our organization for these reasons. And that usually attends their interest and make them very often come to the workshops and discuss those matters.
So no more questions come through, but I've got another one around, so where does the data architect sit, or where does the data diplomat sit in the organization?
So, as I state in my book, the data diplomat is a posture. It's not a role that you can find on a position. It's I usually have that as a consultant, and also as a consultant, you're a diplomat from start because you're sort of trying to do better, improvements with your customer without annoying them, because then you're kicked out. And but in the situation of workshop and provoking and trying to get something fruitful to come up to work with, that's a balance between questioning and respecting, sort of. So that's having that balance takes diplomacy, because you won't get to anywhere either. But I think it's easier to be a diplomat if you're external and jumps into a company. But I know organizations that have made data model facilitators an assignment or almost a certified role, and put them on a special place in the organization, very close to IT, either under the CFO or the CEO, sometimes connected to quality. And since they are sort of autonomous and not too heavy involved with IT, they manage to stay quite neutral. So they could sit, not being too attached to the things they need to be diplomats against.
Okay, thanks. Well, we haven't had any more questions come through, so I'd like to thank you for the webinar. That was very interesting. Okay. And so, as I said, we'll publish this on the Dharma website, and hopefully people buy your book and it becomes a bestseller in Australia.
Thank you. Actually, my enterprise architecture made simple, the black one, yep. Made a bestseller a certain time with technical publication. which was rare because it was the first time that the Swedish authors found this the bestseller category.
Yeah. Okay, that's great news. Oh, well, thanks a lot, Håkan, and talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.